Well, good day to everyone, and thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend some time with us here at AD Solutions at Manage Engine. As this is one of the first webinars we've had in 2018, I just want to see if everyone had a good holiday season, had some good time off, maybe got to travel a little bit. For me, I kind of had the opposite. I didn't travel at all, which was really nice, and had a great holiday myself. I think here at the AD Solutions team, we are very excited about 2018. There's a lot of great things that are going on, some things that we are going to be able to contribute and create solutions for, and hopefully we can do that for you. We wanted to start off 2018 really talking about insider threats, and that's really what we're going to focus on today in our webinar. There's a lot of different things that we need to consider with regard to insider threats, and obviously in a 45-minute webinar we can't cover all of them, but we want to at least kind of get you thinking about some things that you need to consider within your organization and within your infrastructure, and try to lead you down the path to some solutions. Before we get into the material itself, let's actually do a brief introduction of me for those of you that haven't heard me speak before. My name is Derek Melber, and I will be your moderator and your speaker today. I am currently an Active Directory MVP, but over the last 16 years, I've both been in Active Directory and group policy. I've written about 16 books over those 16 years. The book that you see here to the right is actually not one of those books, so I guess I have 17 now. We actually produced here in the AD Solutions last year, at the end of the year, this dummies book, which you can actually download. I'll show you how you can download a free PDF of that book for yourself. It's just a really easy read, something that you can read yourself, maybe get a couple of nuggets of information out of, and certainly share with others in your organization to get them to understand the importance of privileged access. And hopefully, if you can protect privileged access, we can reduce the insider threat, which we're going to talk about today. I do want to talk about some other resources that we have available for you after we're done with the webinar today. Everything that I'm going to show you is absolutely free, so you can come and consume it as you see fit. First, I want to talk about our blog. If you come to our landing page, manageengine.com, and just go to support blogs, you'll be able to actually do a very easy search on maybe things that you're looking for. So let's talk about if we want to search on Active Directory. And if you search on Active Directory, you can find a variety of different blogs that talk about a variety of different things. I just wrote a blog up yesterday, which will be posted this week or next week, with regard to read-only domain controllers and the attacks that can be made on them. So there's some very interesting things that we try to post out here. Obviously, it's not only about product. As you see here, there's so many things that are completely neutral from product. So this is a great resource for you. A second resource I want to point you to is something that's been out for a couple of years now, but we find that there's no other place on the internet where you can get this information in one location. And that's if you go to manageengine.com, hover over products, and go to security hardening. The security hardening site, if you go to the scan to the bottom of this site, you'll see that there are different areas around security: service accounts, users, groups, and whatnot. Each of these areas is extremely important for you to secure, thus we call it hardening. And the idea is for you to click on one of these areas and go through the blogs and videos that we have for you. And by the time you're done with them, which is usually less than a half an hour per area, you now have the arsenal to go into that area within your Windows servers and Active Directory and actually secure that particular space. So this is a really good place for you to come to kind of get a good solid foundation, what I call it a baseline for your security. And you can do that using this particular site. So those are some excellent resources. Finally, I did want to point you to how you can get a free PDF of our book, Security and Privileged Access. Just come in. These links are all over our website. Just click on it, and you can download the free ebook. So that's for you to consume. One more thing I want to point out is our 2018 World Tour. this will be our 4th year of this AD seminar series that we've been doing around the world. A couple of years ago, we went to about 25 countries. Last year, we went to over 20 countries. And this year, we have already scheduled, I would say, about 15 different countries before the middle of the year. So please pay attention to your emails when they come through for the invites to these. These are excellent resources for you come to attend. If you haven't been to one and you're currently in Europe somewhere, we will be in Europe in the next coming months many different times. I know that I'm heading to Amsterdam and then London, and then in about 3 to 4 weeks, I will actually be going to Italy, and then Spain. So please keep an eye out for these. These are excellent resources for you. They're all about solutions. How in the world you can solve things that you struggle with on a day in and day out basis. And we try to kind of find things that are trends that we find that administrators are asking questions about, and we try to solve those particular things. So we're very excited about this. And obviously we will be focusing on GDPR as well. With GDPR coming in May, we are trying to get as much information out about how to prepare for GDPR as possible. So those are some excellent resources. Finally, there's my email address, Derek@manageengine.com. If you have any questions about Active Directory, group policy, security, about this webinar, please email us. It is certainly my job to help you get solutions. And as an MVP, I have a variety of different people that I can contact that know a heck of a lot more than I do, and we can try to get you answers to things that maybe you're struggling with. So without further ado, let's jump into the material. I will give you a slight warning. We are going to be going over a lot of information in this short amount of time. So if you're trying to do dual tasks, I'm going to ask that maybe you, if you have the opportunity, put the other thing down and focus, because we're going to go through some important information, but a lot of information. So this isn't going to be something you're going to be able to just pay attention to on the side. We're going to be going deep. We're going to be jumping into group policy. I'm going to be showing you things. So I'm going to ask for your attention on this, because we're going to be going over a lot of information in a short amount of time. And what we're going to be covering is the foundation for insider attacks. And then we're going to talk about specific ways that you can help prevent attacks from insiders in your organization. And not only prevent them, because we can't prevent everything, but if you are attacked, I'm going to show you ways that you can get real-time emails alerting you of certain types of attacks. So very important, this particular webinar and what we're going to be showing you. Now, when we look at the makeup of an insider threat or attack, we have to understand what we're dealing with. I actually did this presentation a couple of days ago, and someone contacted me and said, well, what about these other attacks? Well, everything that they asked me wasn't an insider attack. It was more of an inside attack from big organizations that are trying to attack organizations. That is also something that's very important, but those aren't insider attacks. Those are attacks from the outside world trying to come in. What I'm trying to talk about here is friendly fire from your employees, from people with inside of your organization that is trying to do something to you. And we never know the makeup of an insider attack. It could be the innocent woman working in finance. It could be the gentleman that we have concerns about that's working in engineering, or anyone in between. We never know who the insider is. So what we need to do is we need to take precautions to protect against known threats, to protect against the ways that most insiders try to get into the organization and try to do damage. So we need to do a variety of different things, which is why this particular webinar is going to have a variety of different things associated with it. Now, here are some things to consider. What level of privilege does the current insider have? Now, we have to consider the different ways of someone getting privileges, okay? First of all, they can have local privileges on their desktop. If you have added them to the local administrators group, well, they're obviously going to be a local administrator, and they have full control over their machine. They could also have access throughout Active Directory, throughout the network, through Active Directory groups. It could be a domain admin. It could just be a SQL administrator. But again, that is giving them privileges to something on the network. Now, outside of groups, which the first two are really focused on groups, we also have something called user rights. Now, user rights are configured per Windows computer, and every single Windows computer can have a different set of user rights. Now, these user rights are typically things like access over the network, log on locally, backup files, restore files, change the system time, a variety of different things. There's over 35 user rights that you can configure. But these are ways that users can actually get privileges. And then finally, you have privileges within applications. For example, I can go into SQL and I can configure someone to have privileges in SQL itself. So it may not just be on the network, it may be specifically to an application. Now, how specifically are privileges granted in a Windows environment? Well, this is a breakdown of typically how privileges get elevated. Someone is added to a group, as we mentioned, like domain admins. Secondly, someone is added to an access control list. Now, we have to understand where access control lists are. Let me give you the list. Access control lists are on files, folders, Active Directory objects, printers, and even services have access control lists. Those are the primary things that have access control lists in a Windows environment. So what you need to do is you need to monitor both group membership and the modification of these access control lists to make sure that someone isn't gaining access to something they shouldn't have access to. We also mentioned user rights, and of course that's one way to get elevated privileges. Then we move into more of the attack areas. Stolen credentials. Now this can happen in a variety of different ways. Someone could actually just look over someone's shoulder and get their credentials. Someone could put some kind of an application on a computer that mimics a logon screen to get those credentials. We could hijack a particular session. Many different ways to steal credentials. And then finally, we have to worry about not only operating system, but operating system and application vulnerabilities. These are where, especially lately, we have different attackers getting into the operating systems, getting into the computer in certain ways. So this is kind of the lay of the land of what we're going to have to be up against when it comes to trying to protect our environment. Now, when it comes to the type of attacker, we actually have, I'm sure there's many different types, but I'm going to break it down into two. Those that are accidental and those that are on purpose, okay? The accidental one, this is an employee that just, they made a mistake. They didn't know something bad was going to happen. It was purely an accident. They could have been going on holiday and they gave their credentials to someone, trusting them, and then that person that they gave the credentials to actually caused some damage. So they shared something they shouldn't have shared. It could also be that they were on the internet, they got an email, they clicked on something they shouldn't have, and now something happened through their account, but they didn't even know that they were doing it. And then you have the flip side of that. You have people that are actively trying to cause problems. They're inserting malware. They're trying to access and maybe even accessing things that they shouldn't have access to. They're wanting to cause damage, either deleting information, they're sharing information, they're posting information on the internet, they're causing denial of service attacks. Who knows what they're doing? So when it comes to what we're trying to protect against, really what I want to get you to understand is we have to protect against almost everything. And again, we only have 45 minutes, so how are we going to do that? Well, what I want to do is I want to focus on really a couple of different things that we can do. Now, if we look at the variety of the things that we can do, many of these you're probably already doing, like you're educating your accidental threats. You're educating your employees not to do certain things. But again, it's still going to happen, right? We try to tell them not to share their password. We possibly can move to an environment where it's impossible to share their password because maybe you're using multi-factor authentication and a password isn't enough to get in. We can try to negate them of sharing sensitive information, right? We can have a DLP solution. We can have file auditing to make sure that they're not gaining access to something that shouldn't be gaining access to. We can also move to an area where we are deprovisioning users correctly. Now, this is one that we can actually do technically, and I'm going to show you how you can do this very easily in your environment, where we're going to secure user accounts for employees that have left the organization, okay? Now, those are for the accidental threats. What about the attackers? Well, you're probably already scanning for malicious signatures, whether it be your antivirus, whether it be whatever. Now, I'm going to throw in something that I stumbled upon just a couple of days ago, and I actually wrote a blog on this, which hopefully you read about this. The new Spectre CPU attack, Microsoft has a fix for. It was actually released on January 3rd. But Microsoft is now saying that if your antivirus software doesn't meet Microsoft requirements, you can't install that patch. So please go do a little research on that. You will be able to see that blog posted. I think it's going to be this week or next week from our site as well. But look that up. Configuring firewalls. I'm sure that you have firewalls. Now, for those of you that have always thought about the firewall being at the external of your network, please think about putting firewalls at the endpoints as well. Your domain controllers, your servers, and your desktops. I know it's a lot of configuration, but through group policy, it makes it very simple to make everything the same and make easy changes to firewall settings. And then we get into more of proactive stuff. I want to monitor for inappropriate access and changes. There's two different things there. Then I want to negate common attacks. Well, if we look at the makeup of this, where can we spend our time that we haven't already spent our time to maybe secure our environments? Well, I think the two areas would be monitoring and negating common attacks, and that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on the monitoring of changes and access, and then we're going to also focus on the common attacks and how we can protect against them. So let's talk about one particular common attack, which is someone attacking authentication protocols for Microsoft. Now, when we talk about the authentication protocols, we have to consider Microsoft and what they're suggesting here. Now, according to Microsoft and their support page, they're giving guidance for NTLM and LAN Manager. And directly quoted from this website, Microsoft says, we are aware of detailed information and tools that may be used to attack LAN Manager. Then further down, they make a point to reduce the risk of this issue. We recommend that you configure environments to allow the use of NTLM v2 only. That's directly from Microsoft, okay? But we can't always just do exactly what Microsoft says. So let's talk about what our options are and how we can actually maneuver through this. This is kind of an area of landmines that you can't just go full bore. You actually have to consider the environment. So what are our protocol options? Obviously, Microsoft just mentioned three of them: NTLM v2, NTLM, and LAN Manager. But we also have Kerberos. Now, when we look at the lay of the land for Microsoft and authentication protocols, the two that we absolutely need are Kerberos and NTLM v2. So why would I ever need LAN Manager or NTLM? Well, these authentication protocols are legacy. These are actually back from the Windows for Work group and Windows NT 351 and NT 4.0 days. So we're talking about very legacy protocols. However, they're still supported even in Windows Server 2016. So what we have to understand is why we have them and what are the vulnerabilities. Well, let's first of all talk about the vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities, the limitations on NTLM is they have a length of the password limitation of 14 characters. And then the password hash is not very good. So the end result is they're easy to crack. But why do we have them? Well, legacy applications often require these. And the service accounts that are running services for these applications need to authenticate back to AD, and they authenticate, you guessed it, with legacy authentication protocols. So we need to secure NTLM and LAN Manager. Now, when you look at the landscape of the attacks, many of these attacks are due to two different ways of attack. One is a password hash crack. They are cracking the password hash with a tool like, it used to be Loft Crack, but now it's more Cane that they do it with, okay? They also are using pass the hash attacks. So what they're doing is they're obtaining a hash of an administrator type account, and then they're crawling through the network trying to get domain admin credentials, okay? So these are the two types of attacks against these password hashes of LAN Manager and NTLM. So what do we have to protect? Now, this is a list that goes from easier and less effective to more difficult yet more effective. That's how we go down the list. So let's talk about the list. The first one, use passwords greater than 14 characters. Now, this is important because of the limitations of NTLM and LAN Manager. NTLM and LAN Manager can only have a 14-character password. They cannot go greater than that. Now, let me kind of walk you through some things inside of the operating systems, show you some different areas. Now, I'm going to jump into group policy here real quick. And I'm just going to open up a GPO. It doesn't matter which one, because what I'm going to show you is the same for all group policy objects, because I'm actually showing you a limitation of the password itself. Notice here, minimum password length and the password policy. If I want to make this minimum password length, let's say 22 characters, notice that there is a hard-coded limitation in here of 14. The reason for this is Microsoft wants to support LAN Manager and NTLM in case you have an application that needs it. And if you go above 14, you break it, and it'd be very difficult for them to educate you on why it's broken. So they put a hard-coded 14 here. So what my recommendation is not just suggest to someone, hey, use greater than 14. My suggestion is you use a tool that's actually designed to increase the password length in policy, not just in suggestion. And that's where you get AD Self-Service Plus and something called the Password Policy Enforcer, where you can actually go above 14 characters. Now, the benefit of a tool like this is that you have these password policies that are based on different configurations. So each of these AD Self-Service Plus policies can target different users. So I could have one that's for, let's say, executives. I could have one for finance and HR, and I can have a different one for IT and help desk. So I can have different minimum password length depending on the type of user in the organization. This is a technology that you can implement very easily. And now what you're doing is you're helping defend against NTLM and LAN Manager. Now, why would it any differences? Well, if we go back to the limitation here, you might have an application that requires LAN Manager and NTLM. So you can't go to the very last option and disable it. But what you can do is disable LAN Manager and NTLM for all users, humans. By using a tool like AD Self-Service Plus, all humans have to have 15 or greater passwords, and your service accounts can have 14. That is the power of a tool that can have multiple password policies in the same domain and enforce them. So that's how we're tying the solution together, okay? Now, we also have to determine if NTLM and LAN Manager are even being used. How are we going to do that? Well, you can actually do that in a couple of different ways. So let me show you one way, which is through using Microsoft. So I'm going to come in here. I am going to go into a group policy object. I'm going to go down here to my security settings, local policies, security options, and right here inside of Microsoft, you have the ability to audit, notice these audit options, NTLM. Now, when you define these, it actually is going to track some behavior related to NTLM. That tracking is actually going to show up in your event viewer, okay? I told you we'd be diving around in the operating system quite a bit. So now we're in the event viewer, and we're coming down here to these application and services logs. You'll notice these right here. Let me go back to here, applications and services logs. We go to Windows, and we go to NTLM, okay? Now I have this actually enabled, so you'll notice that I'm actually tracking when NTLM would have been used, okay? I'm not denying it, I'm just tracking it. But this only tracks part of what we want to look at. What you need is to know when NTLM and Land Manager is actually utilized. Well, that's when we're going to go to a tool like AD Audit Plus, which can track all logons. Now, I'm going to show you a report here of log on, log off of log on activity. Okay, now you'll notice here, right? Derek has been logging on. Let me trigger an NTLM logon. I'm going to come over here to a desktop where Derek, you'll notice right here, is logged on, and Derek is simply going to connect to the domain controller and connect to a share, but using the IP address. Now, watch this. When I go back and I refresh this, you will notice that there was an NTLM call right there, okay? When you or anyone else, or you have a batch file or script connecting to a, sorry, I can't type today, an IP address, you're bypassing DNS. Because you're bypassing DNS, you never get a Kerberos call, and you're not using the domain name, you're using the IP address, so Kerberos isn't used. Thus, you're using NTLM. Aha, okay? So we need to be cautious about things like this, and we need to track things like this. I want to be able to come in here, and I want to be able to go and say, I want to know every time that NTLM is being used. And when you search on NTLM, you want to find nothing here. When you find nothing here, because you're tracking it, now you can actually go down and disable NTLM. But if you are finding that you need NTLM, great. You're going to have different password links for different users. Those that don't need NTLM, you go above 14 characters. Those that need NTLM, you go below 14 characters. Okay? Then you also want to set up additional configurations. You don't want to store the hash in Active Directory, and you want to restrict certain users from using NTLM and LM. Now, going above the 15 or the 14 does it, but you can also set restrictions. Let me show you how to do that. Here in Group Policy, the very first thing in the option, right, here's the path that you're going to go to. We've already been here. But the very first one is do not store the Land Manager hash. You want to enable that. Then you have these restrictions for NTLM down here for traffic, for users, for remote connections, everything. Please take advantage of these settings. They are important. I know that Land Manager and NTLM is historical, but the attackers, internal attackers, are taking advantage of these things to get into information they shouldn't have access to. Okay? Awesome. So what does it take to reduce attacks against password hashes and Kerberos tickets? This is a different subject. Now, earlier we were talking about Land Manager and NTLM. Now we've moved up and we're talking about NTLM v2 and Kerberos tickets, okay? Now, what I'm going to suggest you do is I'm going to give you some action items here. I'm going to suggest you go to these 3 websites, and you're going to do research on pass the hash, pass the ticket, golden ticket, and now there's something called a silver ticket, okay? So all of these concepts are negating NTLM and Land Manager and moving to Kerberos and NTLM v2. I would start at the Microsoft website. Then I would go to windowssecurity.com, and then we've actually written some stuff on our website as well. You just need to be educated. There are white papers at that PTH website from Microsoft, which are stellar. The security team at Microsoft wrote them, and they have great recommendations. I actually am going to give you many of those recommendations here. But know the basics of these attacks. Let me decrypt the basics for you. First of all, most of the attacks around these are worthless unless they have local administrator credentials. So what's the key here? Don't give most users local administrator, and then they can't be susceptible to these attacks. But once the attacker has one set of credentials as a local administrator, according to Microsoft, it takes about 48 hours to get domain admin credentials. So it's quick, all right? So we have to do our protection here from the insider perspective. What can you do? Don't give users local administrator privileges. If currently you have users that are in the local administrators group, I want you to go and take them out immediately. It's your worst nightmare. 2, don't allow users with elevated privileges to log on throughout the network. Well, how do you negate that? Well, monitor. Remember, monitor was our #1 thing. Notice this. I'm going to go back here to 80 Audit Plus. You can set up reports, customized reports to know, for example, when certain people are logging on to certain machines. So this one is if Derek logs on to a Windows 7 machine, but basically I could say if Derek logs on to anything but his own machine, I can actually send you emails on that kind of stuff. And not only Derek, I could have, if this group logged on to anything but these group of computers. And you can actually get real-time alerts around this. These are things that you can set up. This information is all being obtained here through the event viewer. The problem is the security log in the event viewer becomes very large, very cumbersome, and very difficult to pick out the information. I have 150,000 events that's constantly cycling through here. It's almost impossible to get reports on this. But if you have a tool that's leveraging that information, you can actually get real-time alerts, right? So here's a log on to Windows 7 as part of the domain admins group. This is the type of thing that you can do inside of a tool like AD Audit Plus to track and monitor behavior that is potentially an attack on your network, okay? 3rd, ensure that the local administrator account has a unique password, right? Microsoft has a solution for this called LAPS, Local Administrator Password Solution. It's free. But you also need to monitor this. That's where AD Audit Plus comes in. You implement LAPS, and then inside of AD Audit Plus, you can actually come in here and do LAPS audits. When the password is read, you can look at information about things that are going on with LAPS with the right tool. You really can't do this with Microsoft technology because you're only using the event viewer, which doesn't have reporting and it has limited alerting capabilities. So with a tool like AD Audit Plus, we've actually built these in to help you protect your networks against these insider threats. Don't use the same password for local administrator accounts on different computers. When you actually create computers, make sure that you either randomize the password for the local administrator or you make different passwords and archive that information. Of course, there are tools out there to do this. Actually, ManageEngine has tools for this. So please take advantage of these tools to make sure that your passwords are unique across your network. Don't allow users, privileged users, to browse the internet with their privileged account. Okay? Think about it this way. When a privileged user is browsing the internet, every single website that they hit, coming back to their computer has local administrator credentials. Now, there are some technologies in Internet Explorer which can help reduce this, but it's just the reality, all right? Finally, to reduce password, hash, and ticket attacks, force changing of passwords often. Because when you change the password, the hash changes, and now they have to rehack into the password hash, all right? How do you do this? A couple of different ways. If you use AD Self-Service Plus, you can force them to reset their password more often. And also using AD Manager Plus, for those accounts that have their password set to not expire, you can actually find them and change the password quickly. This is pretty awesome. Now, I'm in a tool called AD Manager Plus. I'm going to run a report on users that have accounts that never, password account never, let's see, password never expires. Where's the password never expires? That's here under passwords. Users with passwords never expire, okay? I generate it and look at the list. I could right now select all of these accounts, and through this report, I could actually reset their password, okay? Tell me this isn't powerful. Tell me this isn't powerful. You can actually do some of these reports in AD users and computers, but you cannot perform actions on what's there. If you have a list of 100, you'd have to go to each 100 individually. We provide an AD Manager Plus actionable reports to where you can actually perform actions, right? Look at these things that you can do in reports. Get tools that are going to help you secure your environment, okay? Very important. All right, so far we've talked about getting rid or securing NTLM and LAN Manager. We've also talked about how to protect against password, hash, and ticket or Kerberos ticket attacks. Now what I want to do is go into more of just monitoring for privilege escalation attacks, okay? These are things that could happen on your network behind the scenes from an insider that are very difficult to see, very difficult to see the behavior, but with the right tools, it's not that difficult at all. First of all, we need to know what's happening on our workstations, okay? I mean, you see right here in my small environment, I have a domain controller and I have a desktop. If this user has the ability to control their desktop, how do I know what's going on? I mean, how many desktops do you have in your environment? Are you telling me that you're monitoring the behavior of all of them? Of course not. You don't have the time. But watch this. If this user goes in and they change anything with regard to their computer, right? So let's say they go in and they add someone to the local administrators group. How would you know that? I mean, how would you know that that occurred? Well, watch this. If I go into the right tool, now this actually isn't real time, but let me tell you, the power of this is pretty impressive. If I come in here and I go to my workstations and I have that workstation being monitored, which of course you can monitor all of them. Now what I can do is I can go in and I can look at local account management, and I can look at when members are added to groups. I can know immediately when this is occurring. This is extremely powerful. How often do your administrators' groups on your workstations change? Not very often. So if you get an alert telling you that this happened, this is powerful information. But you also need to know when a group is changed, when a new user is created, when user rights changed on your workstations. These are the first attack computers. According to Microsoft, the first computers that are attacked are workstations. They're endpoints. There are users. And if you're not monitoring them, you don't know when you've first been attacked. But if you can actually stop the attack at the workstation, they're never going to get to your server. They're never going to get to your domain controllers. Make sense? Okay. Now, there are some attacks we're just not going to find through these things. So now we have to look at other things. Plus, internal attacks, right? We need to know when someone is trying to break in as another account. It has nothing to do with the local workstation. Well, if I have an employee sitting at their desk just hammering, trying to guess the password for every user in the domain admins group, there's going to be a lot of negatives, right? A lot of failures. Well, we need to track repetitive failed logons. Then we also need to track if users are constantly getting locked out. We need to be able to track these things. Now, with the right tools, this is actually pretty easy. With a tool like AD Audit Plus, I can actually go in and look at reports for failed logons. I can look at logon failures. I not only can look at logon failures, here under my user management, I now can actually look at account lockout analyzer. I can analyze the lockout. Now, the benefit here is I can look at a variety of different things that are locked out. Then I can say, okay, I want to know the details. I want to know the recent logons. I want to know where they've tried to log on. And I want to know the history of the failures, accounts disabled, the bad password. I want to know the details around what's going on. So combining these things together, you now get a vision of what's going on. What you can't do inside of Event Viewer, you now can do inside of AD Audit Plus. And everything I'm showing you so far, everything is predefined. These are all predefined. You don't have to set up anything. You simply start consuming the security logon from your domain controllers and your workstations and servers, and voila, you get all of these reports and everything can be alerted, okay? Everything can be, look at these alerts. I gotta show you these alerts. I've created some pretty cool alerts, right? A replay attack was detected. Groups, the system was shut down. An executive was locked out. OU ACL changes. Remember I told you that the two top ways that someone get privileges is an ACL and a group. So I have groups and I have ACLs. If anything changes, I'm going to be notified, okay? Let me get an example. I know you're sitting there going, well, okay, Derek, I see these settings. Show me something. Great. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to modify the schema admins group. How often do you know if someone is added to schema admins? Well, watch this. If Bart is added to schema admins, I know within seconds because I have a real-time alert. Look at that. Right here it is. Schema admins, Bart was added on January 11th, 7:42 a.m. That's my time right there. Okay? Powerful. You have to have tools like this. If you don't have tools like this, you don't know if you're under attack. You have to know if you're under attack. Okay? So AD group changes, I just showed you that. AD ACL modifications. Now, notice there are two types here. There's Active Directory and there's file. This is delegation in Active Directory. These are access control lists on files and folders. Two totally different things. This is actually easier than this, but they're both something that you have to monitor. Now, what I mean is if someone goes into Active Directory, right? So someone goes into Active Directory, they go to an organizational unit, and they come in here and they say, all right, I want to have my HD techs have the ability to reset passwords, right? Reset user passwords. Next, finish. How do you know that that was changed? Well, I know it because, first of all, I have a report for OU permission changes. Okay, now this one has a little bit of lag time with it compared to some of the others, which are real time, but I am going to get this to update and it will show within a reasonable amount of time, there it is, that it changed. There's my old and there's my new. And then over here, now I have an alert telling me. That happened in about 10 seconds. I just updated, that's all I did. This is powerful. I have to be able to monitor changes in my environment. The same thing can happen with file modifications, okay? User right modifications, I showed you that with the workstation. You can also do it with servers and your domain controllers. You can also look at specific file access. Now, here's when we get into something that may be more related to like a ransomware attack. I have to know, and I can check with File Audit Plus, when I'm being attacked. I can look at reports on certain things that are happening. I can look historically, right? So I want to look over the last 3 months if I've had any types of attacks. Look looky here, I have changes to permissions. I have rename attacks. If I have rename attacks that are going over and over again, basically what could be happening is ransomware is renaming everything because it's now being encrypted. You can set up File Audit Plus to trigger alerts for these types of things. So if you are under attack, if someone is renaming something they shouldn't be renaming, if you have malware, ransomware, which is renaming things to secure it so you can't get into it, you can actually be triggered with these types of things. But that's file access. So across the board, we've now covered a variety of different things. Everything from files to really deep settings inside of group policy for LAN manager. I know it's a variety of different things. I know it's complex, but that's why we have these webinars. That's why we have our blogs. We have the security hardening site to help you secure these areas. I've been in your shoes, and I am telling you right now, these are areas that you must secure because they're known. If you aren't securing these and you're worried about other things, you're missing the basics. You have to secure the basics because the basics still today are primarily where attackers are getting in, especially your insiders. So understand your insiders, know how to protect the common attacks, and know how to monitor for behavior. You have to have the right tools, okay? Where do you go from here? First of all, email me if you have questions. Second of all, keep an eye out for your email. You're going to get a start going through that. I gave you some links to password hash attacks. Reads up on some of those. Download our products. They're all free, full-blown products for 30 days. I'm going to give you a challenge. I didn't do this 2 days ago, but I'm going to challenge you. If you currently don't have AD Audit Plus, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to our website, okay? I want you to download products, AD Audit Plus. I want you to download it, install it, configure it, and set up an alert. I guarantee you can do it in under 30 minutes. Tell me another product that you can download, install, configure, and get information out of it in 30 minutes or less. It's a very easy yet extremely powerful tool. Utilize the tools that you have for you. It's my job as an MVP to help you create solutions. This is an amazing solution. Now, we're at the end of our webinar. I don't see any questions that are outstanding. First of all, I want to thank you, the audience, for attending. I know your time is valuable. Second of all, we've had a team working with me from the AD Solutions team helping answer questions. I want to thank them for helping me. We do have some more webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. Please keep an eye out for those. We try to tailor our webinars to meet the needs that you have. If you have any suggestions for webinars, email me. I am more than happy to customize webinars just for you. Our job here at Manage Engine is to help you with solutions. That's what we do. With that, no more questions are coming up. I'm going to let you get back to your day. For those of you in Europe, please keep an eye out for our seminars that are coming to you. I'd love to see you. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to try to have just a quick chat with you and hear about your problems and help solve them, okay? So with that, I'm going to let you get back to your day. And for Derek, Melber, and the rest of the AD Solutions team, until I see you again, thank you and have a great rest of your day.